And
All
I'm
right.
exercising urine therapy as we're going.
Yeah, that looks yummy.
It is apparently good for my immune system and somehow makes me sexually aroused. I don't know
Oh,
that it's supposed to do that.
Yeah.
well, hey, that's a plus, right?
It has to be
So,
room temperature, right? It can't be any other temperature for it to really activate, right? It's like it has to
yeah,
be your core
yeah,
temp.
that's the story I go with. I let it cool down from body temperature to room temperature for 20 minutes. Otherwise, it just tastes like piss.
Hey,
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're talking with JP Sears, and we're so excited to have him on our show. He's an emotional healing coach, he's a YouTuber. I would call him a YouTube sensation. He's an author, an international teacher. He speaks at events. He's a world traveler. He's a curious student of life. His work empowers people to live more meaningful lives. JP is the author of How to Be Ultra Spiritual, and I have his book right here. I don't know if you can see that. And I've been reading it. It's really cool. We can talk more about that. Um, and let's see, he's active with his online videos. If you guys haven't been able, if you're not really familiar with JP, he has these really fun, very funny, sarcastic videos, a series called The Ultra Spiritual Life. I highly recommend you check them out because they are just, some of them are so funny, mainly because they speak to the ego and it is the way I experience it. So, but you can, but they, he's actually become quite big, and he likes to provide he calls it entertainingly informative videos, including, of course, the hit comedy series Ultra Spiritual Life, and that's accumulated over 100 million views, which is incredible. You can learn more about JP and his work at awakenwithjp.com. So welcome, JP. Thanks again for coming on our show. We appreciate it so much. Um,
Yeah, well, Allison and I am super happy to be here with you guys, and I appreciate you only reading the good stuff that I made up about myself when I was writing that bio once upon a time. So I like that. Very, very like compartmentalized introduction of me. That's perfect.
awesome.
well,
Great.
the parts that we get to interview today, we wanted to find out a little bit more about you, or at least I did. And I wanted to ask my first question and ask who's Jonathan Sears?
It's a good question. That's my alter ego, who I haven't identified with since I was born, and they printed that name on the birth certificate. And of course, when I was getting in trouble when I was younger, then my name would be Jonathan out of my
Oh,
mother's mouth.
Oh, yeah.
But aside from those two intersections in life, I've just been JP my whole life. They apparently, from what I'm told, my parents started calling me JP instead of Jonathan because my sister was just a year and a half older than I. So she wasn't able to say Jonathan, but they were trying to get her to say JP. So that's my rambling way of saying I don't know who Jonathan is. I
mm.
don't know who JP is either, but I identify more as JP.
But the P, where did the P? I mean, is that what you're drinking today, or what's the therapy you said you were drinking?
You are 100% right, Maya. I've got my P therapy going, which
That's the
is
next trend, right?
absolutely. If it makes people
Yeah.
grossed out, then it's got to have health benefits to it.
Yeah.
If you're the
And
1% that's doing it, then you know you're good.
people do P therapy, that's for sure. In fact, I don't know if you guys know Troy Casey. He and I were just texting about urine therapy. He's been doing it for like 13 years, and
Yeah, I
Right.
saw his
something.
videos on that.
It's
Not
something, that's for sure.
not sure
Well,
about
for
that
me,
one, but yeah, I know
yeah.
the ancestry, that somewhere in our background that's supposed to be great, but not wanting to jump in right yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been doing non-urine therapy for a while, where I find therapeutic benefit from not drinking my own pee, and it's great results, really.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I love it. So I guess I could say that this is definitely, I can imagine only that this is going to be an incredible, fun show today. So um, it's going to be fun and funny, probably. But I wanted to also just give the audience like an idea of how we originally connected with you, JP. Like, I'll share my experience first, if that's okay with you guys. I took my first Czech course, and JP was my teacher, and yeah, it was really, I don't know. I walked in, I was a stay-at-home mom, for about 3 or 4 years, and I was all nervous about the class. And I walked in, and JP was like, "It's okay." He had a very calming voice, and it just kind of put me like at, I was just very much at ease as soon as I walked in. So I kind of remember that, and I'm like, ever since then, I was like, oh, okay. Like, you don't have to speed through life. You don't have to, that everything doesn't have to be super fast. You know, take a second to breathe. And I just kind of always remember that moment. So that's my
Yeah,
that's my experience with JP when I first met him.
and
And
I
you're very,
remember.
very true to yourself too, as from what I experienced too. So
Oh, well, thank you. The urine therapy helps me be true to myself. And Allison, I was also just reminiscing about the time you and I first met, and Maya, you as well. And Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was November 2006 in Seattle where
it
we
was actually in
met.
Atlanta, but yeah,
Okay, so
2006, I
I
think.
met
Yeah.
you guys in the same class.
Yeah, I used
Allison
to live in
forgot I was in the
Atlanta.
class.
Yeah.
She
Well,
forgot.
I wanted you to give your experience. I didn't want to take that away from you, Maya.
So that would have been September 2007 in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's right.
Good memory.
That was a long time ago. 10 years. Oh my God. Wow.
Wow, we are rolling right up into our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
I feel like the three of us should go away together,
Yeah.
like maybe Hawaii, just to commemorate the 10-year mark.
That sounds good to me.
Definitely. Maui's good. I liked seeing Ram Dass. I think we can all get spiritual with him and kind of do his whole his swimming out in the ocean kind of thing and kumbaya.
I think that's good. The kumbaya will be very ceremonial for sure.
Right? Yeah. So it is interesting how we've all kind of met in the startup of all of this in terms of like you as in our life at the time was a teacher of opening up the whole holistic coaching and providing information from Paul Chek and kind of giving that understanding of balance. And a lot of what our show is about is how to integrate and take information. Like one of the things that we found was we ended up taking a lot of information from like the Paul Chek Institute and some various other places and having a little bit of a whoa, what do we do with all this stuff? Because as we became practitioners, and especially as I'm talking to, for my experience is that we are basically, I noticed had so much wealth of information, but to funnel it down to people who just wanted to figure out what was the pain release or find out why they are having such problems. There was so much information, it became too much to even try to give it to somebody else. And it was a really interesting development of like, well, I've got all this information, now what do I do with it? And to come like to first full circle to meet you back here today, it makes me want to know, how are you integrating all this change for yourself? Because to now step into big arenas doing comedy after becoming so well informed with teaching health and fitness, and how are you doing that? What's the keys for you to keep yourself integrated?
Well, I think integrated for me would be synonymous with balance here. And I'm guessing this isn't going to be a news flash to anybody listening to this, but what I have found, in order for me to be as balanced as I can, like not perfect at all, but just like less bad than I used to be, is I've had to become aware of how out of balance I've been. So, my experience, Maya, is also like we go take like the Czech courses, and I know we've all drank the Journeys of Wisdom Kool-Aid with John McMullen. So one of the beautiful things is we go to these 4-day, basically immersion courses, and amongst all the blessings that we receive, the learnings intellectually, the teachings into our heart, what we don't receive is much in how to integrate it. Because it's like 4 days worth of those courses all at one time. That's like getting 6 months worth of food all at once. It's like, how do I deal with this and distribute this? And I know certainly working with clients, you know, it'd be like I'm taking this 5-gallon bucket full of food and saying, here it is. Like,
it's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and people's capacity for change is much slower than that. So that integration practice. So I found for me in my personal life, as well as like working with clients, I just became dogmatic. Like I was way out of balance, too much too soon, as well as like dogmatic in my life of thinking like this is the way, as opposed to like this is a way to do it.
Right.
And what I really appreciate about my life is I've come into what it just feels like a better place for me, where the information that I feel is incredibly valuable, I don't take it as seriously as I used to. I think dogma is just another word for it. Like, I'm serious about this. And there's always a delusional sense of certainty that comes with that. And now, like a lot of the same principles and values and methods, I still value to this day. I probably value them more, yet I take them much less seriously, so I can actually make fun of them. And I can see the shortcomings of them, which helps me better see their gifts. So that to me makes me feel more integrated, rather than just to the extreme of being really like certain and serious. Like I feel disintegrated, disconnected from myself, and not very connected to other real human beings when I'm in that mindset.
Yeah, that's incredible to kind of see the realization of like the statement that comes to mind is, you know, was it hold on tightly, let go lightly? And it's that same kind of feeling of, you know, that you've got this information and it's kind of more around you, you live it, you do it, and then it kind of merges into you. But then you look back and say, oh, wow, look what I did that. Look what I did with this.
I would go home and visit my parents and act like a jerk because everything wasn't gluten-free.
Oh, right.
And,
yeah.
And then like part of, for sure. And to me, part of the integration practice it takes time, and it takes like we have to get out of balance, we have to burn ourselves through our own self-righteousness to learn like what is the balance. Yet I was finding like, okay, me acting like a jerk and projecting control onto my family and the people around me, that wasn't being gluten intolerant, that was being a jerk. So like becoming integrated sees it's like two different things, and not hiding the jerk energy behind the noble looking hiding spot of like a health practice. And I'm like, no, that's jerk energy. Like I've got to like work on that directly, as opposed to hiding it, trying to hide it behind something, and then it just gets misdirected. I'm like, oh, that's how gluten intolerant people are. We gotta, you know, create world wars in order to uphold our gluten-free values.
Yes, because if you affect the gut, you affect the brain, right? So, you know.
Well, that's what oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to lastly ramble on I love the integrated question. To me, health information, health practices, spiritual information are much more valuable when we can enter into our life, like own it. It's like, what's my version of this health practice, my version of this spiritual practice? And then I get to be more authentic with it. I get to have it serve me more, as opposed to me just serving it as a philosophy, or it sometimes working against me while I think it's working for me. So when we integrate it into our lives, that's in my, from my point of view, it's us owning it. And I think that's a great place to be with any kind of practice that we're trying to use to help us.
I love that. Yeah. And that goes into like, the way I see that is taking other people's opinions, respecting those opinions, but not necessarily taking them as your truth. You can consider it, you know, but I think people sometimes make the mistake of just, okay, this person said this about me, so it must be true, or you know, they believe that things should be this way, so it's true. Well, we got to stop and consider, like, actually that might not be true for us, and that's where
Yeah.
the play comes in. You know, you play to find out what your truth is, and that
Yeah.
creativity comes up, and then you find, okay, who am I? And that's the only way, in my opinion, that you can really find that. And I felt like with your book, as I was reading it, you know, at first what came up for me was that uh, this is just really silly. And what's the, you know, like, this is very playful, but I'm so used to like reading books about information and
Yeah.
about, like, you know, just I'm getting something out of it or something metaphysical, that I was not used to reading a book like that. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, you know, like I thought I was having fun, but I guess I was having a little more fun, you know, like it's kind of funny. So just wasn't used to reading. So I guess I could transfer the fun over to my reading. But yeah, I would say that it's really, it's like you're in that character, and it's hilarious because like I can see definitely parts of myself that have presented themselves. And it's, you know, I think it's everybody's kind of hit those extremes before, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I could relate to it. It's very funny and yeah, just very playful. So I think we all kind of need that. At
Mm.
least I do. I can speak for myself, but yeah.
Yeah, I doubt that anybody's ever visited their doctor and their doctor says, you know, you need to laugh less. You need to be less playful in the name of
Yeah.
your health. And I think using what I believe is sort of like an alchemist tool of playfulness is very therapeutic. I think it's part of the path of us finding ourselves. And to me, the challenging part of playfulness is looking at what's most important to us and figuring out how can we be playful with that. It's, I think the easy part is being playful with kind of like the meaningless things. We're sitting around with friends talking about
Sure.
maybe what's going on in the world, and it's easy to joke about the superficial stuff, but to look in the eyes what we feel most self-identified with and be
Right.
playful with that, like that's scary because I think that when we can be playful with what we're most self-identified with, it's a way to separate ourself from what we thought we were, and that can feel like a little bit of a death to our ego. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't not be self-identified with that thing, that dogma, that health practice, this role, because it'll feel like I die. Like you'll take that away from me if you separate it from me. But I nonetheless, as scary as I think that is, I think it's a worthwhile practice, and I think playfulness can be the alchemist that helps separate us from what we're not.
Yeah,
I agree.
mostly it comes
Yeah.
from a place of like where I love where Ram Dass talks about this, where he says how um, you basically have to use one tool to let go of the next tool until it's like the
Yeah.
Zen practice. You eventually find that you have to let go of everything, and to allow your ego to know the agenda is kind of like letting yourself say, "Oh, let me just jump off this cliff without a parachute." It's kind of like, no, that's not going to happen. And so you can talk to yourself about, "I let go of that," or I don't have an attachment to that. But when it comes down to really looking at certain things, you see your attachments are quite deep, and that it's not so easy to sit there and let go of things. And to make fun may just take the abrasive side off of it, you know, just where you can laugh just like a kid or laugh, you know, I know guys, they always seem to be a little bit easier to rough around the edges with each other out loud, whereas
Yeah.
women don't do it as well.
Well, that is so true. I kind of learned that men play differently than women do. You
Yeah.
know, it's so different in a way, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it can be different. I think like anything in life, there's different forms of playfulness, and
Right.
there might be some men and women differences, and that probably just infuriated the whole whatever kind of community that needs to be infuriated by categorizing men and women. Yeah, regardless of what angle of playfulness, whether it's sort of roughhousing playfulness or satire or slapstick, is uh, uh, there's a lot of beautiful ways to be playful. It's just like food. There's a lot of beautiful flavors to experience.
So the satire is really your flavor. Is that true for you? I mean, is that kind of your true comedy, or do you have something else that you haven't spread yet too, or kind of brought up to the surface? Do you feel there's
I
something?
Yeah, I do think satire is my, call it my comedic fingerprint. That's what feels most natural and authentic to me. And I didn't even know what the word satire meant until I guess some of my early comedy videos were coming out and people were saying, "Is this satirical or are you being serious?" I'm like, I don't know what the word satirical means, so I'm not really sure. So after a while, I started looking it up, and it's like, yeah, that's very much my natural method, and I really appreciate satirical comedy because, like, one, it's my method, so I'm just arrogant, and then also for other reasons. I think there is an element of subtlety to satirical comedy that's like, in a way, it's like off artistic, and it really seamless to the audience because being portrayed satirically, at first you're not really sure, like, is this a guy kidding around or not?
Yeah.
So I love that subtle component as opposed to like slapstick comedy where it's just so obvious, like everything's just being exaggerated, there's no question about it. So I like that little essence of mystery involved in satirical comedy. And then also, when the comedian, if you will, we'll call him that. I think I'm talking about myself in the third person at this point. When the comedian is exercising the art of satire, it further involves the audience because the comedian doesn't come out and say what he thinks is true or what the deal is. The comedian is just essentially slicing with a sword through the, I would call it the psychological untruth. So he doesn't come out and say, here's what's true. He says, let me slice through all the delusions around the subject matter. So the audience is left having to think for themselves, like, okay, if I consider all this stuff that he just sliced away, poked holes in, is not true, what is true? But and the audience that has to come from the audience member, or they get to be confused, like, I don't know what's true anymore, which I think is a great place to be. We're relatively less attached to the truth we once held. So I like that. To me, it's a satire is a way of really respecting the inner wisdom of the viewer of the comedy rather than essentially telling them what to think.
Or just making fun without really having any kind of point, but just to make fun of somebody else, of like the,
Sure.
you get into those ones that are easier to hear comedians come across with this, just let's make fun of something, because it's
Like
obvious.
that.
But this is kind of a creative step of authenticism, I guess is a word. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to make it a
No,
word.
but it is now.
Because in what I'm hearing you say is that it really is a tool for people to check and see where they're caught up and have to say, oh, didn't know I really thought about that like that.
Yeah, that's my delusional point of view. And a few minutes ago, Maya, you mentioned, I think you were quoting Ram Dass, so I'd like to quote Maya, who was quoting Ram Dass. And
Okay.
Allison, pretty soon I'm going to ask you to quote me, quoting Maya, quoting Ram
Okay.
Dass. When you said the purpose of a tool is to help you let go of one tool. So like we need
Right.
another tool to let go of a previous tool, and let's not get too attached to the new tool because pretty soon we'll need yet a newer tool to help us let go of that tool. So to me, satire sort of fits that. It's a way of helping us let go of what was a tool for us. And the tool might be a belief system, it might be a practice. And I think anytime we start worshiping what we're not, like, tools, we start worshiping those, it's like we make that the destination. But here's the reminder through satire or a weirdo named Ram Dass that says, I let go of that. So I think satire can help us let go of something that probably once upon a time served us really well.
Absolutely.
Yet what
Yeah.
serves us well will eventually disserve us if we don't let go of it in search of something that's deeper. Because I think we're always bigger than what we attach to. But if we stay attached to what we were once attached to, it's like we're trying to make ourselves so small that that thing we're attached to is still a perfect fit for us. It's like, no, we were in third grade, we wore pants that fit us well. We're trying to stay
Whereas
attached to
today you don't.
That's a good analogy. I like
yeah,
that.
it's like really constricted in us trying to pretend we're still that small. And Wally's really chiming in here. And
Is that your dog?
Yeah, yeah. My girlfriend Amber's dog, who I could probably consider him my dog at this point.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
have you become the stepfather?
Amber and I just took our relationship to the next level.
Oh,
There you go. Yeah.
You can now adopt a dog with a stepfather kind of combo. You know, you take it in as your own and, you know, become
like
the
a father.
And I'll passive aggressively resent him for being alive. Like, you still get some of your mother's
Why are you here?
attention.
So then,
Did you know?
That leads me to the
that?
question of who is Zephyr and how is Zephyr?
Yeah, Zephyr. I'm not sure if you can see the Zephyr sticker on the water bottle.
Oh.
So Zephyr's at home in Charleston with actually a mutual friend of Amber and I's, who's staying at my place for 2 months. She was looking for an adventure of like just being somewhere new, and it just worked out. Wow, you stay there for 2 months while I'm in Costa Rica. So that worked out perfectly. And Zephyr, you know, it definitely pulls on my heart to be away from him for a little over 2 months, probably 2.5 months altogether. Longest time I've ever been away from him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So aside from my heart aching about him and this bug attacking me, Zephyr's doing well. He's going to have his 13th birthday on September 20th.
Wow, that's
So
my dog's 14, so he's right there with him.
I had heard he had been a little sick recently, and I had side note here. I sent you some information about mushrooms and the certain fungi perfecti. It's the things that we use to help our dog who had cancer. And he had 2 big tumors when he was like 15. And then with these mushrooms, we ended up reducing the cancer, and they disappeared, and he lived for another 3 years. So he was 18 when he died. So if you're really interested in any health issues or anything you need for your Zephyr, you know, I'll send it to you again. But there's a whole...
Yeah, please do it.
Yeah,
Please
there's
do.
a whole...
I apologize. I must have missed the message coming
Yeah,
through.
because, you know, you're a world traveler now, you know.
Busy.
Which is the other question I'm asking is myself is like, what can you tell to our listeners about the steps that if they were to try to follow you in their steps of turning into such a sensation on YouTube and becoming well known and viewerships increasing and having all these events, what would you say have been the trials and tribulations and the joys of all this creation that you've created?
Yeah, I love the question. And first, I would say don't try to follow me. Maybe at most feel inspired by some things that I do that appeal to you. Yet I would dare say, you know, seek your own path. And then I think another thing is probably the worst way of trying to get big on YouTube or online, get a lot of views, is by trying to get big. I think that, like, that's just a pure ego pursuit, and God love us all. That appeals probably to most of us. Let me try to get big online because that'll gratify me. So I honestly think that that's the least effective way of getting big online, is trying to get big online. I think really connecting to a solid purpose. Where is your heart? What's the offering that wants to be lived through you? And will you do your best to unapologetically express that while being your freaking self? To me, that's what's most important in order to have inner fulfillment with doing YouTube in this case. And I honestly think being fulfilled on the inside, doing videos, doing your art for your own amusement, and having it really create inner satisfaction sets you up more likely to sort of make it big. And honestly, like, it might not be in your destiny. It might not be in your astrology to make it big. It's not for everybody, though it certainly is for some people. So Yeah, and also on the ego gratification note, I also think when it comes to like what is our purpose, what am I really trying to offer people, we need to connect to something solid in us, not just like let me like make up this purpose so that my ego can feel like I have a purpose, so that I can feel like I'm doing this for something other than just trying to get recognized and get a lot of people paying attention to me. And I don't know that we can ever be certain that we've landed on our actual purpose versus just what our ego is saying our purpose is, so that we can believe we're being purposeful when we're just like trying to gratify our ego. So now I'll start to speak a little more directly to your question. I think it's very important for us to amuse thyself first and foremost. In amuse thyself, I think part of that means if we're on camera or expressing whatever our art is, we need to do our best to be ourselves, to be personable, because that's what allows other people to connect to us. Long gone are the days where we're supposed to come across as a newscaster, just like so disconnected, so perfect. It's like, that's one, it's not even entertaining, and two, there's nothing to connect to, because people need another person to connect to. And if you're not letting your actual person and personality come out, then it's not really a connective offering you're given. And if it's not a connective offering, then there probably won't be an audience that grows, because you won't get an accumulation of people being connected to you, of like, and connected through their attention in this case. So I think we have to aim to amuse ourselves. We have to aim to be unapologetically, imperfectly our personable self. And I think that's easier said than done. It takes practice of being on camera to like not be something that we're not, but like let ourselves do our best to be sloppy and flawed, and realize like those idiosyncrasies and the idiosyncrasies that we're doing to amuse ourselves while we're allegedly talking to other people, that's necessary in order for there to be surface area of self out on camera. And then lastly, before I ramble on forever,
you can keep rambling, it's okay.
In a little bit of a more practical sense, in hindsight, I've noticed there's I would call them three pillars that seem like they need to be in a video or an online offering in order for it to be a connective offering that is something people want to pay attention to. And having at least one of these in there, I think, is good. If there's two or more, even better. But one would be have the offering be entertaining. And there's so many ways to be entertaining, but I think bottom line is you being yourself is one of the most entertaining things you can do. Like being real is entertaining. The second pillar would be inspiring. People like to watch things that make them feel this phenomenon called inspiration. And then thirdly, I would call it the pillar of awareness. People like to be made aware of things that they weren't aware of. It creates intrigue, which pulls them into the video. So if there's awareness, if there's inspiration, if there's entertainment, or a couple of those, then our online content, I think, has a better chance of beginning to create momentum where people will want to pay more attention to us.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that.
That's a great way of telling people to do their own thing and to be themselves.
Yeah, to be themselves. Yeah.
That's a half a sentence,
basically. But you know, it's a good, actually it's really great, because a lot of people don't know how to be themselves. They actually have to have, I would include myself as being there before and still maybe there. But I think sometimes we need steps. It's okay.
Sure.
And it puts things in perspective. I think
one of the things I notice the most is how hilarious it is to say do your own thing, but when you really don't know who you are, because you're always evolving, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of this humor behind that door that says, yeah, be who you are. And then you go, well, who am I?
Who's that?
Absolutely. In fact,
And it always changes, I guess, too, in some ways. But
I
yeah.
agree. And to that point, I think it was probably about 2 years ago, I made a sincere video that was entitled How to Be Yourself When You Don't Know Who You Are.
Okay.
And I think part of, like, one, does any of us ever really know who we are? I don't know, but probably not. And so when we're in a place when we can realize, like, to be most authentic in this moment, my truth is I don't know who I am, then that's who we are. Like, I'm someone who doesn't know who they are. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Like that just, that's a root right there. That's freaking great.
Yeah. I agree.
So the
You gotta start
advice, what do you
somewhere.
say? Oh, be who you are, but yet you don't know who you are. So
Well,
yeah, just be.
and that's the mystery, like getting to know that person, like, oh, that's cool. Like, let's play with that for a second and see where that takes us.
So I have another question. One of the
Yeah.
things I admire about you, JP, is that from my point of view, you really have to have done a lot of work on yourself to be able to stand up and say, I'm being authentic to whoever I am right this moment. And to really step it into a heart space where some people may interpret it, from a different space. Doesn't matter. It's not about them. It's about you and what you want to provide. But then to come into a bigger arena, I mean, you're stepping into places where, like the Tony Robbins, the Lewis Howes, the big guys that are meeting up with people and showing, on a big platform that they can stay in that place of authenticity. And do you find, like, what has kind of become your best way of saying to yourself, I'm still here. I'm still within myself. I'm still kind of coming from a space of that trueness, like, because there's a big story behind how big you get outward. Like, because you go to
Do you
so
lose
many,
yourself,
you do all these
right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
you do all these interviewing, you do all these performances. Some things can get lost. So how do you center
For
that?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I would agree to the first part of your question. I or what comes up for me about that is I am incredibly grateful that I had, I would call it 13 dedicated years of self-work before I started to get any level of recognition. And at times, as it is, it's hard for me to, like, be myself, not lose myself. And honestly, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, for someone to get a lot of recognition without a solid foundation of
Oh, right.
self. It might be gratifying for a little while, yet there is a reason why celebrities kill themselves at times. There's a reason why child prodigies, Justin Bieber, will act in really uh, uh, horrible ways, like spitting on fans and just incredibly self-righteous. And I don't know this, I'm projecting an opinion onto someone like that, that they are in one of the worst states of suffering, which is being disconnected from themselves because they don't know who they are, because they've seen millions of people have an impression of who they are, and then they've been hypnotically tantalized by starting to believe I am who I think other people think I am, which has nothing to do with who they really are. But then they start self-identifying with who other people think they are, and that is a very lethal way of losing oneself and being disconnected from oneself. I think is the worst suffering we can encounter. So you see people acting out because it's torture. They don't know how to get out of it. That's why, like, a child who's being tortured, like, the child's not allowed to play, eventually they're going to start throwing temper tantrums. So that's what some of these, adult celebrities do, who are still stuck in, I think, an early childhood state of feeling disconnected from themselves. So one of the things that's important to me to be as balanced as I possibly can be is to constantly remind myself that I'm not who other people think I am, and to remind myself I too poop out of my butt. I have I have my opinions and my offerings. And then I think another thing that's important to me is to do my best to be of service to the message that wants to live through me. That message, like it might, like I call it, like the being in a monogamous relationship with my creative muse. So it might come in the form of like, I'm inspired to speak to this message and do that through this video or whatever it is. And I think the message that wants to live through me is always going to be a solid anchor into my authenticity, because I think it's bigger than me. So if I can do my best to be of service to that message that wants to live through me, and do my best to not compromise to something that I think this will appeal to people more, but to hold my course steady on the North Star of the message that wants to be voiced through me, then I think that's an important way of staying true to myself. And I think maybe a third component of being true to myself is to do my best to be aware when I'm losing myself and not being true to myself. And something that came up for me probably about a year ago, it was when my book was in the pre-publication phase. So I don't know, 8 months before it came out. But I started to make a lot of like great friends who were best-selling authors and just wonderful people. Yet some of them like have objectives that aren't my objectives. And they start just giving me all this amazing advice. JP, here's what you got to do to get your book on the New York Times bestseller list, and all these strategies. And it was great advice, and it was terrible for me. I spent about 3 weeks thinking that I needed to be the person who they thought I should be, which is a New York Times bestselling author. JP, you've got the audience. With these strategies, you can make the list, which wasn't even meaningful to me. But for about 3 weeks of like, okay, let me start planning to do these strategies, it just started feeling crappy to me because it wasn't authentic to me. Like, to me, the purpose of writing my book wasn't to have it be some big marketing scheme. It was to have the artistic expression of writing my book. So that meant for me, my book was a success before anybody else read it. So that was something, it took me probably 3 solid weeks of really losing myself before I could wake up and say, nah, thank God this feels icky, because that icky feeling inside of me is the electric fence letting me know, wow, I've really wandered outside the boundaries of being me and being true to me.
I appreciate that you say that, because I've come across similar issues of feeling icky about certain marketing strategies, you know, and they're kind of put out there as like, this is the only way. But what I've discovered, and then so I just stopped marketing, you know. So forget it, you know. But then I came back around to it, like, well, I have to do this because, you know, I want the people who need to see this to see it, or who want to see it, or who want to share see what I have to share, see it. So I have been realizing, and I think through some of your stuff too, just to not, some of your videos make fun of some of those marketing strategies, which I really appreciate, but I think some of them really do work, but you've got to find the right strategy for yourself. So some of them really work for some people, but they may not work for me, but others may work for me. So I think that's kind of where people have to realize that, oh, you don't have to do something you feel icky about, you know?
I agree 100%. I think ickiness is almost like a universal feeling that says, oh, I'm out of alignment with myself. So that might mean like this strategy, this practice isn't for me, just like you mentioned. And it also might mean like, well, or this strategy is for me, but how I'm using it needs to change, or why I'm using it needs to change. But there's something to get our attention through the great messenger called ickiness.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and being comfortable with it, I think, is right. Ickiness. But I think being comfortable with it also is gonna bring it out to the people who want to see it
Yeah.
too, or who need to see it. You know, if you're not comfortable with it, people are gonna see that. So,
Which
yeah,
goes back to just if it's so hard to do, if it's so like there's so much tension or there's just no, there, you can't figure out how to make it easy, right? Usually that's an alignment thing. I mean, most things are they're going to be perfect for you or just going to be like stepping a step ahead of yourself, like just one step ahead, a very small step. And there's always this progress of just like, oh, I did that very easily. But when there's something really
Yeah.
hard in your way and you're trying to like maneuver this big boulder, it's then that, a part of you that's really kind of coming out and saying, this may not be for you. Pay attention.
Yeah, I used to call everything self-sabotage. Like if something's not working smoothly, it's self-sabotage. And like self-sabotage is such a real phenomenon, and there's so much depth we can find about ourselves through investigating self-sabotage. And also like I'm realizing like also one of the reasons why things might not be moving smoothly, and I think it's a very common reason, is this is out of alignment with me. And I look back at a lot of
yes,
times in my life where I was just trying to do something. I'm like, what am I self-sabotaging? Like I'm maybe procrastinating, maybe just like not bringing my full self to it. And I would just, okay, I'm self-sabotaging. What's the deal? And now looking back, it's like, yeah, I was out of alignment with myself. I wasn't self-sabotaging. I was like selfing. I was like not doing something that was gonna take me out of myself. So
Mm,
I think
yeah,
there's like a dualistic consideration when something's not working well for us. Am I self-sabotaging? And like we really might be. I think all people self-sabotage. And then the other question is, am I out of alignment with myself? And honestly, I think it's almost like those two places both lead to Rome, because I think self sabotage is always an inconvenient messenger delivering the message that says you're out of alignment with yourself
right.
in some form or another.
Like a convergence where, if you don't put enough action behind something, it will feel like it's a big boulder and you're not going to do anything. But if you actually are putting a lot of effort in, it's the two meeting
yeah,
at the same side. You have to follow through. And there's some things like you writing this book took a lot of work. I mean, this isn't some like, oh, overnight. Writing a book is really detailed and a lot of editing has to go into it. There's a lot of work that's not seen. And from what I'm seeing now, just starting this podcast, doing more media, social media stuff, even to get your work out there, there is a commitment, a daily commitment that you have to go to and say, this
yeah,
is worth my time and effort, whether or not I know it in all aspects of how it's going to help me or grow and just simply, in finding myself. But also there's that aspect of being able to say to yourself, holy cow, I didn't know I could blossom so well. Like, that there's a part of us that really doesn't understand, technology. It will fail. Things will not work. And you have to go, okay, let me sit through this and get through that part because it's not to say I can't, I can't do it. It's just I don't know what I'm doing right now. And then you're going to doing that self growth in between there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always trials by fire for us to burn away more of who we're not. Yeah, I think those times always come up. They always find us. They're always blessings to me. They oftentimes feel like curses, and also, I love what you said about like when we're putting our work out there in a proverbial way, we have to be willing to know it's worth it, even though like we might not see a return on the investment. And I think we have to make it worth it. We have to figure out like, how is this serving me, even if nobody else sees it? And then from there, like being consistent with it, whether it's consistency is what writes a book or what allows our offering to impact people. To me, it's like nobody ever got fit from doing a workout.
Mm.
right,
Nobody ever got
yeah,
healthy from eating one meal of health food. Anything good takes consistent application of an action. And I think that's the case for us putting our offerings out and having them make an impact through consistency.
So JP, I've noticed that you're doing a comedy tour. Is that true?
Yes.
So tell us about that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. So it'll be, let's see, starting with a 3-show run in November. Where will I be? Boston, Brooklyn, and Washington, D.C. So yeah, it'll be me showing up and me doing my version of comedy. And of course, there will be some musings of my heart worked in there. But I love working with audiences, and even more so, I love working with audiences who appreciate me. It's like, wow, we're starting off the evening already basically as a family. So it's a really magical experience from my point of view. And I love to be able to just experience this beautiful dance with a bunch of people who, for some reason, are drawn to my work.
That's awesome. Have you experienced any hecklers yet, like in the audience, or?
Kind of, but like they're playful hecklers. So
okay.
you know, it's all been what I would call good-natured heckling.
Okay.
And I think I guess the fortunate position I'm in is when someone's showing up to watch me, they probably already know of me, rather than like going to, call it like a comedy club where it's like, okay, a bunch of drunk people show up and they don't know who they're going to watch, but they're going to watch people. So it's pretty much good-natured heckling, where to me it's actually, when that happens, within reason, I'll acknowledge some of it and use the heckling as a springboard to spontaneously heckle them back and just have a good spontaneous interaction. So it's cool. Fun when it happens.
Yeah.
You had said
awesome.
in an interview that you had awoken to this part of you that wanted to be a more comedian type, with you being able to say hi and allowing that part out. What was the comedians that you followed? Who were you mostly like drawn to when you listened to someone?
The first comedian I ever really followed was Bill Hicks, and it was
I love Bill
after
Hicks.
after he died, but it got into his work and it's like, wow, this guy is saying something real. I mean, and saying it in a very well-crafted, artistic way, but it's like, and that's saying something real. Wow. And I think Dave Chappelle is another amazing comedic genius.
Oh yeah.
So there aren't too many comedians that I really follow, but those would be a couple of them. And I think actually Louis C.K., I have to throw his name out. I think he's someone who is not only a great comedian, but he says something real too.
Those are good.
Yeah, they're all great. Well, we're going to wrap up, I think, unless anybody has any more topics they'd like to talk about, or anything you want to add to it.
One thing I wanted to ask.
Go for it.
With all the traveling you're doing, are you getting to that part where you're seeing your friends are all having families and starting to, become fathers and stuff? Are you interested in becoming a family man with with child or anything like that? Do you want to be a father or do that kind of stuff, or are you kind of open to that, or?
Yeah, it's weird. Since I've gotten into my relationship with Amber, it started in January, that's when that possibility started to be considered. Before that, I was like, no kids ever, like never.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about having the right chemistry with the right person, where like I'm not at all thinking like I'd like to start like having a family right now, but it's something when the time's right or the right time finds you. I know sometimes it's like not so much under our control. I definitely feel open to it. I think it would be a great challenge, and I can also now see there can be great meaning. So Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be crossing the bridge tomorrow, but it's a bridge I'm interested in now.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
Wow. That's really cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the reason I
Yeah.
asked that question is because it sounds like you're just opening up to whatever comes, but when you're established in such where I perceive to be where you seem to be on the road to being on the road a lot more than you realize, like in terms of like what it takes to do all of what you're trying to do, the events, the comedy,
Yeah.
all that stuff, and then time kind of slips by while you're doing all that fun stuff. So it's like one of the things I was wondering is, are you noticing that draw now that you've been to this part, but you may not want to go full into Robin Williams stage and do that kind of level, or are you kind of finding yourself torn between two worlds right now? Like, hey, I got this idea.
Yeah, yeah, I don't feel really torn right now. I'm going with the flow of like there's a lot of travel and I don't think I've hit the extreme yet where I'm like, okay, that's too much or I found my boundary, but I'm definitely aware of there's a learning process happening. And I think what my balance is 2 years from now will look probably different than right now. I think 2 years from now, I'll look back and say, like, I was out of balance then. I was just like, saying yes to anything that was falling good. But I think I'll be more selective and more intentional with when I'm willing to travel in the future. So I'm guessing that'll come.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I was going to mention something, but Maya, have you told JP about Bob's video?
I think I sent it to him, but I don't know if he ever
Did you?
saw it.
Oh.
I don't think what video?
Some Bob
Oh, well,
decided
somebody.
he's going to do a version of called JJ Beers, and he did a version. I can send it to you again. I
It's
don't
pretty
even.
funny, actually.
It's a
Yeah.
video of his. He's ultra sensual, and he's one of the.
Okay.
He
So
got
somebody has
creative.
done a
Somebody.
satire of your satire, basically.
Exactly.
Finally, someone had to do it.
But that
I'll look
that's
forward to
that's the
checking that
key
out.
of importance, right? When you can be, turned on, and then someone starts doing that kind of satire on you, because I mean,
I
everything like SNL made a humongous business out of doing that to everyone, right? So you've reached a pinnacle.
I I'm honored. Please tell Bob at least maybe I'll have to watch it before I say I'm honored. But no, that's awesome. I can't wait to check that out.
Oh man, it's really funny. Okay, well, if anybody has anything else to add,
I
go for
guess.
it. If
No
not,
further no
no further questions.
further questions or statements, Your Honor. But thank you guys and for having me on. I appreciate you both.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you
ma'am.
for coming on the show. And if you, again, I'm going to just say, check out JP's book, How to Be Ultra Spiritual. I'll leave a link on YouTube and on the website as well. JP has a free gift for everyone. It's a PDF. And if you want to download the PDF, it's called 7 Ways to Be More Spiritual Than Your Friends. And if you want to download it, you can go to pureenergypdx.com and there'll be a landing, or it'll be with his podcast information. You can download it there. As well, I'll put a link on YouTube too. So I think that's about it. And JP, you can find him at awakenwithjp.com. Definitely check out his videos. And if you can, try to check out his schedule on the road and see him live. I have, and it's really awesome. It's a different experience. So I highly recommend.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. So
Good to see you,
thank you so much.
JP.
Yeah, it's great to see you,
Good to see
JP.
you
Yeah.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Goodbye.